All right. I'm awake. I got coffee. Here we go. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to another wonderful Saturday morning. I hope you have coffee, if you drink tea, whatever that might be. I'm Andy, your wonderful host for CafeBTW, a morning gaming podcast. Going on our kind of like 2.5 year mark with 67 episodes. I did want to mention that I did create a YouTube channel. Slowly moving VODs over to YouTube just to make it easier for people to watch some former episodes. So at some point, I'll have 66 episodes available, and some of them are evergreen, meaning, we talk about a lot of retro content. So a lot of it's not as current event-y, so you can kind of rewatch a few of the interviews we did, like Daniel Pacina. I have an interview. We interviewed this guy with Turok, the guy that sound designed Turok, all kinds of fun episodes. But always glad to have you all back with me. Today's going to be a little bit different because a lot has happened in the gaming industry. And as you know, I do tend to like to talk about a little bit about current events in gaming. But today, it's going to be a lot more of current events, my thoughts on this whole acquisition with Microsoft and Xbox. Activision, Microsoft, I can't talk this morning. Acquisition and how that affects the gaming industry, what I think about it. I see a lot of the internet talking about it and their opinions, and of course everyone's opinion matters, is subjective, but there's a lot of things to take into account here, especially from someone like me that works in the gaming industry, works directly with publishers, developers, doing charity stuff and working in philanthropy. And we have worked with Microsoft before. For instance, Stanford Cancer did a activation with Sea of Thieves, Rare, which was an acquisition of Microsoft. Rare was purchased by Microsoft, and we worked on an activation with Rare, which connected us back to Microsoft, who owns Rare. So it's just like kind of getting crazy with the little like through lines that are connected through acquisitions in this industry, and it really goes to show you where this industry is going. Now, before we get into all that, I want to give you all a scope of the industry, right? Some numbers that I dug up to give you guys an idea of where we are from like analytical standpoint in the gaming industry before we go into this whole jibber jabber about, why Microsoft might have bought Activision and whatnot. But let's talk about streaming platforms first. A total of 222.9 million hours were streamed on Twitch by the end of the third quarter of 2021. Total of 8.8 billion hours of video game live streams were watched across the world, up to 3.6 billion in 2 previous years. So we're talking about streaming, and obviously streaming goes hand in hand with a lot of gaming because there's tons and tons of streamers playing video games on stream, promoting games, whatever that is. But these are huge numbers, especially on Twitch, of course. And then obviously in 2021, we had the record-breaking live, how many viewers were on a single live stream, and that was 2,470,347 million viewers on the Gref G, he's a Fortnite streamer. I believe he's from South America somewhere. But another interesting note, and this goes for the charity side, Dr. Lupo, just streaming on Twitch over his history, has raised $10 million in lifetime fundraising through streaming for St. Jude. Jacksepticeye, as recent as this past winter, raised $7.5 million to support News Story on Thankmas charity event, which had over 5,000 campaigns created. What's up, Video Game Restoration? Man, you're the man. Thanks for stopping by. Streamers started to receive more exclusive contracts for Twitch and YouTube, which is also big. Now let's get into the gaming industry numbers. The video game industry was estimated to be worth $178.73 billion in 2021. Yes, $178.73 billion, people, which is an increase of 14.4% from 2020. Now, the recent forecasts are estimating that the video game industry will be worth over $268 billion by 2025. Do you know why I think that's wrong, actually? Because I think it's going to be $500 billion of an industry by 2025. I think if our acquisition recently was $70 billion for Microsoft to purchase Activision, and they're estimating $68 billion by 2025. That's completely off. It's going to be higher than that. It's going to be $500 million, $500 billion. And then, of course, the biggest note of recent is the biggest acquisition in gaming history happened on January 18th last week, with Microsoft paying over $70 billion for Activision. But I'm not done with numbers here. One more to note, and the mobile gaming industry, which is maybe an industry that not a lot of people play, but lots and lots of people play it, the mobile gaming industry is on track to surpass over $120 billion in growth revenue, over 20% in 2020. So that's $120 billion in mobile gaming alone. We're talking Candy Crush, Clash of Clans, all that crazy stuff, and maybe some other random stuff like PUBG Mobile and stuff like that. But these are important numbers to note. These are insane numbers to note. And I think that it's more important before we get into the acquisitional side of it, to understand the growth of this industry. Gaming has always been a big industry. We are by far larger than the music industry and the movie industry, by far. That's how big us gamers and streamers affect the industry today. So just wanted everyone to kind of get a sense for the size of what we're dealing with here. Now, obviously, Microsoft, I woke up on Tuesday morning and, I've been seeing these acquisitions happen. I've been seeing streamers sign I've been seeing streamers sign with, like Ludwig signed with YouTube, Tim the Tatman signed with YouTube, which and Dr. Lupo signing with YouTube was a huge surprise because the guy Twitch has been a huge supporter of Dr. Lupo. So, but obviously family's important. So if they get a big payday, why not have a lifetime contract and be able to take care of your family? But you wake up Tuesday morning and Microsoft acquires Blizzard. And I'm like, whoa, for $70 billion. That is insane, people. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like insane. And obviously these, you could see here in the photo, the big dogs are Overwatch, Diablo, Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Candy Crush, as we mentioned, StarCraft. These are huge IPs. And of course, with Blizzard and a lot of the, terrible things they've been a part of, I'm a huge Diablo fan, right? I love Diablo. Diablo 2 is my favorite game of all time. I deliberately did not purchase the Diablo 2 remake because I didn't want to support Blizzard with all the horrible things and the treatment of their staff and the way they treat their actual employees. I did not condone it, so I kind of decided to take a step back from Blizzard stuff. But now it's a little different with Microsoft coming in, and I want to talk about that. Genza says, we all know they did it for Candy Crush. Well, yeah, I just shared in mobile $120 billion there. So a while ago, Activision acquired King, which created Candy Crush and makes Candy Crush. So yes, that is true. No Fear says, Microsoft is going to try and push Sony out of consoles. If they own game devs, Sony is screwed. We'll talk about Sony, but let's focus on this particular moment. The internet kind of exploded, and I have some reactions here. PlayStation after Microsoft buys another game, and it says, I have nothing left except Spider-Man. Call of Duty, War, Diablo, Overwatch, Spyro, Hearthstone, Guitar Hero. Just a bunch of funny things. At Sony, we wanted to make a very strong principled stance against employee harassment, which is why 30 minutes ago we decided never to work with Activision Blizzard again. Nobody expects our next acquisition. Like, these are all, like, here's a good example. This one, the typical Vince McMahon meme where you start slowly getting excited about all these IPs, and you could see that the one that really explodes is Candy Crush because, that game is on everybody's phones, and phones reach so many more people. The meme account. And then you could see this one showing the Vision and I guess it's the, what's it called? The Marvel, what the hell how am I blanking on what they call those? The Infinity Stone pulling out of Vision's head is Blizzard. Microsoft is obviously Thanos. And then you have the other gems are Bethesda, Obsidian, and other acquirees by Microsoft. Obviously, that's a funny depiction from The Office. Like, this is just kind of like, how does the internet react to something as big as this? Hey, Tao. Thanks for stopping by. So going into Xbox now, Phil Spencer, who I've actually met personally because I used to work for Jeff Keighley on his YouTube E3 Live, and almost every year Phil Spencer would come on the show. Super nice guy in person, very laid back. He's an industry leader. And I want to be clear that there's something that Microsoft and Xbox has always had is community. And they've always thought about community and the power of community and giving back to the players. Like Game Pass has been an absolute amazing addition to the Xbox ecosystem, allowing people to pay for a service and try games that come out. And also, you know, Xbox Live has been one of the best online communities. Obviously, there's trolls and terrible things all over the place, but the fact that Xbox is taking over Activision, I feel good about that. And you know, what's important here, and I'm going to quote Khalif Adams, who is an amazing personality in the gaming world. He does a Spawn on Me podcast. He did an event with me with Stamp to Cancer with Konami, and he hosted that. But he says this is a huge move for Xbox. Besides getting all the gaming goodies, sharing the new org chart, and it having a majority of women at the highest levels is important, signaling that the team is walking their walk. That is so important. Also, diversity and inclusion is important, but you look at this and you see more females than males here, and that's important for any industry and the growth. And Microsoft is saying right out in front, showing you exactly who's the future leadership of this. And here's the great thing. Activision has to report directly to Phil Spencer now. Once the acquisition goes through. Now, don't forget, people, there's a lot of legalities that have to happen now before this whole thing happens. But this is cool. Transparency is everything. Showing the team immediately that is going to be empowered to take over and control all these Activision, IPs. And I just want to say that I am very happy that Microsoft is taking over Blizzard. And I want to say something. Blizzard was going down the tubes. Like, things were going bad with the harassment, with the terrible things we heard about the way they treated their employees. Just horrible treatment and just terrible toxicity. But who's probably the only one that could come in and fix this mess? And I think it is Microsoft. There's no other better situation here. I don't know how Blizzard Activision was going to get out of it, but now I see it a little bit more clearly. And I don't know if people agree, but I think that at least it's a start. Because I want to be clear about something. Aside from all the harassment and everything, you know, a lot of Blizzard Activision games are beloved by gamers. You know, me personally, Diablo, the series, is one of my favorite video game series of all time, as I mentioned. So how do we save these IPs? How do we save the employees that were affected by this, or even just the innocent employees that didn't do anything but were indirectly affected because their CEO was an asshole and a fucking scumbag? This is our chance to fix it, and that is important to note that Microsoft is coming in, and will they fix the toxicity? I don't think it's going to be like overnight, but I think it's important to note that maybe this is the right move. They absolutely saved Blizzard from a drown-out death. Yes, and the reason I like that is because, like I said, people love Activision games. There's games that are beloved by the fan base, whether it's World of Warcraft, StarCraft, Candy Crush now. There's a lot of important games attached to Activision, and Blizzard has for years provided us with some of the most successful, famous games. And then there's Overwatch. Don't forget the whole Overwatch community that's been affected. And they even said Overwatch 2 got pushed. Diablo got pushed. Another thing to think about is maybe Microsoft can help push the needle and get games to be released a little bit sooner, like Diablo 4. Something to note is like when Microsoft took over Bethesda, that said to me, finally, Bethesda's going to get their deadline straight, and Microsoft's going to help with that. And I think that's happening. Video Game Restoration says, will they eliminate microtransactions? Listen, that's a whole nother thing, a whole nother conversation, because microtransactions has been something in gaming for quite some time right now. I don't know. I think that's definitely there's a toxic side to that, Video Game Restoration, but we're not really going into that because it's more about the broader scope of what's happening. Microtransactions got its own issues. Now Sony, how does this affect Sony? Sony is like sitting in the corner. You know, they got the PS5. It's doing really well. I mean, no one could find one, but here we are with a system that, or a console that, you know, is kind of not left in the dust right now, but there's a lot going on. And I think Sony did make a statement. Let me see if I could find that here. Sony expects to continue and ensure, here. We expect that Microsoft would abide by our contractual agreements and to continue to ensure Activision games are multi-platform. Now, that is somewhat true, but Phil Spencer did come out and say immediately on Twitter that the Call of Duty franchise will continue to be cross-platform and available to Sony people because, you know, they can't screw that up because there's a lot of fans of the Call of Duty franchise that play on Sony. But here's the thing, folks. The console war, in my opinion, is over. And all I mean is the console side of it, because Microsoft right now doesn't give a crap if you buy an Xbox because you don't need an Xbox anymore to play Microsoft games. They have Game Pass on the PC now. PC gamers can play Xbox games. You have to have a Sony PlayStation to play Sony games. Microsoft just doesn't give a crap anymore because they care about software. This wasn't about winning the console war. This is about winning the software war because software is the future of gaming with digital releases. Jensen says, if they accept it, we all know that Sony is going to be the one to say F that. Sure. I think Sony has to think about their next moves and what does this industry mean to them? Does it kind of suck that Microsoft just is like taking over all the biggest IP or publishers, developers? It kind of does in a way because, you know, competition is always going to make things better. So now Microsoft holds all the keys, but also Nintendo, in my opinion, I'm going to state and quote this, in my lifetime, I don't think Nintendo will ever sell Nintendo. And I think that makes me feel good because Nintendo will always be there. You see, Nintendo doesn't need Xbox and Microsoft. Now, will we see Game Pass on a Nintendo Switch one day? Possibly. Will there be more collaborative endeavors with Microsoft and Nintendo? I'm assuming. But I just want to state that I hope in my lifetime Nintendo never sells out. And they don't have to. Because believe it or not, Nintendo is hundreds of years old. Or 100 and something years old. Did you know that they could go bankrupt today, Nintendo, but still have $7 billion in cash reserves? Because Nintendo does have that. But they don't need it. Nintendo's doing fine. No Fear says, I finally signed up for Game Pass for PC. $1 for the first month and $10. You can't beat it. And it's so cool that you don't need an Xbox to play those Game Pass games. And people can play Halo now, the new release of Halo, and enjoy it. Video Game Restoration says, how do you think Nintendo will fall into this? Yeah, I'm right ahead of you, man. I don't think Nintendo's there's nothing wrong with Nintendo because Nintendo is its own ecosystem more than any of these. Because if you want to play a Mario game or a new release or Breath of the Wild 2, you're going to have a Switch, but there's kind of like a love affair. There's like, if you're a PC only gamer, you still might have a Switch because you want to play Nintendo games. And that's a realistic market. So Nintendo's going to be just fine. They're doing great. I think Nintendo's open to collaborating more, but in no way, shape, or form will we ever wake up one morning and see Microsoft acquired Nintendo. Did they try to do that at one point? Sure. But there's just no way that would happen because Nintendo is technically its own Disney in the gaming world. No Fear says, yep, PC and Switch owner here. Yep. And that's a common theme, No Fear. Common theme is that people that are just PC gamers, you know, that truly hate the console will still buy a Switch because they want to play Nintendo games. Jen says they'll let people in, but they're not going to let their IPs out. Never. Nintendo is smart. Don't worry, people. If you've noticed with a lot of the front-facing questions in this whole situation, no one's ever questioned that Nintendo's going to fail. Absolutely not. Nintendo's going to be fine. It's Sony that we're worried about. I like Sony. I have a PlayStation 5. I just started playing a bunch of games like Detroit Being Human, Beyond Two Souls. I played Heavy Rain Remake. I'm in this like story mode kick, and I just beat Beyond Two Souls, which was like really intense, like felt like a movie. But I'm worried about Sony. But let's go through exactly the other IP games that Microsoft acquired, because this actually kind of cuts back to retro gaming a little bit, and I'll tell you in a second why. So I'm going to go through a few games to note that now Microsoft owns because of Activision. Now, there was a racing game called Blur. I'm not sure you guys know this, but this is a game that now Microsoft owns the rights to the IP. Now, that's one. Call of Duty, obviously, is a big one we talked about. I don't really need to show this one. But let's go into some interesting ones, like Crash Bandicoot. You know, Crash Bandicoot is an IP that's owned by Activision, and now here is Microsoft owning Crash Bandicoot. So that excites me. Are we going to get more Crash Bandicoot? I hope so. But it's just something to note, and obviously Crash Bandicoot's a part of that whole retro love. That game is so good. If you're doing a story games, play the original Life is Strange. Don't you worry, Video Game Restoration. I love story games. I played Life is Strange, and I even played the second one. And I have to play the new one, the Colors one. But Life is Strange is amazing. Jenza says there were a handful of games where there's cross-platform play. Sony was hell no, and there's technically limitations that needs to be worked out. Case in point, Rocket League. Yeah, true, but Rocket League is available on everything. So it's cross-platform. So we got Crash Bandicoot. Let's go down a few other cool games that they required. Now, I'm a big point-and-click adventure fan. Believe it or not, there was a bunch of Activision games that were point-and-click adventure games in the 90s, like Gabriel Knight. This is a remake of Gabriel Knight, which is a fantastic point-and-click adventure game from the 90s. This is the remake, I believe, or one of the sequels, I think. But here's a game that now Microsoft has the ability to say, oh, we can make another Gabriel Knight if we wanted to. And let's keep going, because there's a few other interesting ones. Which one that's really big, in my opinion, is Rock Band. Microsoft now owns all the exclusive rights for DJ Hero, Rock Band, all that wonderful stuff. Guitar Hero. I was always really bad at Guitar Hero, by the way. But Xbox players can't play with PlayStation players. I think that will change, though. I think cross-platform multiplayer is just bound to happen as the future unfolds. So Guitar Hero, definitely a cool one that they got. Now, another point-and-click adventure game they actually own the rights to that I used to play is King's Quest. So the King's Quest series is now under the Microsoft umbrella. Now, the reason I'm bringing these games up, because obviously this is a retro gaming podcast first, but it's really cool to note that there's these like little franchises that I loved that potentially could find their way back to the fold. I would love to see a King Quest remake or a new King's Quest, which would be really neat. Moving on, Pitfall, one of my favorite Atari 600 games, 2600 games, is now under the umbrella of Microsoft. And that excites me. And by the way, this game was so ahead of its day. Like, just such a fantastic game. Just so awesome to play on Atari 2600. I would spend hours on this game. Hours and hours and hours. Yeah, King's Quest, man, they own that now, and that's a part of it. So let's keep going down some of these more obscure games that... Police Quest. Police Quest was a game I really enjoyed as well. A little bit more serious in tone for a point-and-click adventure game, kind of boring at times, but this is now also under the umbrella of Microsoft because of the Activision acquisition. And probably a lot of people aren't talking about, oh man, because of this, they got Police Quest and King's Quest now. I'm like, well, not a lot of people are talking about this, but for someone like me, a retro gamer, someone that like played these point-and-click adventure games as part of my lifestyle in the 90s, like it makes me happy to know that, wait, maybe there's a new Police Quest that could be created. And we just talked about some great modern story games like Life is Strange and Beyond Two Souls. Why not incorporate these old point-and-click adventures into those styles of games? I'd love to play a Police Quest in the vein of Detroit Being Human, stuff like that. Like Heavy Rain was really fun because you played at a point like the detectives and you were trying to figure out the murder case. But one of the biggest ones that makes me so happy is Space Quest. Now, if you never played Space Quest, it's about Roger Wilco, which is kind of like a Zap Brannigan before Zap Brannigan was even a part of like Futurama. He's basically, the story is that he's a space janitor that takes over and becomes captain of a sanitary spaceship where they go on missions, but things go awry. And, there were 6 of these made. And I think my favorite one is Space Quest 5, which I have a complete in box as well. But these are interesting to note, and I just think it's really funny that now, maybe Microsoft will do like Space Quest or something. So that makes me really happy. Spyro, which I think many people love, and I know they've come out with some newer ones, is also an IP that's now under the fold of Microsoft, and really great. I mean, who doesn't like a little bit of this in their lives? It's a great game, or a great IP, I guess. Moving right along, we got a few more to talk about. So there was a game called Zork, and believe it or not, Zork is a MUD, or a multi-user dungeon, they call it, which is a text-based adventure, right? And Zork is like one of the OGs in the space in the early days, and believe it or not, Microsoft now owns Zork. Which, if you've never heard of Zork, I definitely recommend checking it out if you like text adventures, which a lot of people probably don't. Obviously, Diablo for me is probably one of the coolest franchises that now Microsoft has under the fold. I just want to see. I decided not to get the remake anymore. I know I didn't do it because I was boycotting Blizzard, but I'm like, now I just don't want to deal with it anymore. I'm like, I'm not going to bother ruining my favorite game of all time by playing another remake of it. I don't need that. So give me Diablo 4, folks. Give me it, give me that. But yeah, we all know about this, but I wanted to show Diablo because, obviously it's something I care about. But, Candy Crush. Does anyone play Candy Crush in chat? I mean, I'm not really a Candy Crush person, but like we said, this is a huge acquisition. I mean, millions and millions and millions of people are playing this game. Overwatch, which we talked about, this is the Overwatch 2 trailer. I've never been a big Overwatch person, but I feel like it's a IP that's kind of, I don't want to say it's dying, but it was so beloved, and I know there's still a lot of love for it out there. So I'd love to see Microsoft really help Overwatch become what it used to be and the popularity it used to have. And I think there's a lot of things they need to do to fix it. I don't, but my mom does. Exactly. It's one of the most casual games anyone can play is Candy Crush. Coffee. Moving right along. The StarCraft community is believe it or not, very huge. I suck at StarCraft. I can't play StarCraft. I'm just so terrible at it. But it's definitely a huge franchise that's still beloved, and a lot of people really appreciate it. So cannot forget about StarCraft. Moving a little bit right along, and we're kind of getting to the tail end. We didn't have a guest today because I just wanted to go a little bit more in detail on this whole situation, and I think it's important as someone that has a podcast and a platform to talk about what this does to the industry. And obviously World of Warcraft has been around for years. I used to play World of Warcraft back before even Burning Crusade came out, which was their first expansion. So makes me feel good to see that, maybe this is a community that can be continued to be supported, and Microsoft is that avenue to keep it going. I was thinking about getting World of Warcraft Classic, but I ended up, deciding not to dig down that road. So let's go into the history of acquisitions. I wanted to talk about, what are some acquisitions that have happened in the past that might not actually meet the size of this one, because this is the biggest one of all time, but some to note that have happened over the course of being a part of this industry. Supercell was acquired by Tencent for $9 million. There's King when they were acquired by Activision for $6 million, which is probably a really great deal back then in 2015. Rare, who we talked about, who's done some amazing retro games in the past and does Sea of Thieves today. They were acquired for only $496 million by Microsoft in 2002. That's a great deal. A couple of other ones to note is Respawn Entertainment was acquired by Electronic Arts in 2017 for $492 million. And notice these aren't in the billions. These are not in the billions yet. And I think that Microsoft did acquire Mojang, which was a big one, in 2014 for $2.7 billion. I think this is billion. It's got to be billion for Mojang. Riot Games was acquired by Tencent for $471 million, which was an interesting one to note. Look at this. Supercell was then acquired again by another company called SoftBank in 2013. Gearbox, of course, was acquired as well, which is a big one. Big Fish I've heard of, not really huge on knowing what they do, but you can see these are other little acquisitions that have happened in gaming. And there's a lot of money here, folks. This is just insane to me how the gaming industry has expanded beyond, like, the numbers are ridiculous. Like, it's just crazy that this is all happening, especially the Microsoft thing, and just seeing all these numbers, all these acquisitions. And then there's this really cool, and this article is from Business Financing, a UK site. So I think things are in pounds, but you could see there's this kind of like hierarchy chart, which kind of walks you through IPs and when they get acquired and the games that they're acquiring, like Bejeweled, Plants vs. Zombies, like all these IPs that become a part of a different organization just from acquisitional stuff. And like EA here, who we didn't really talk about, but they got some problems too, and they got to work some things out, and someone's got to do something about them. But you could see like all these acquisitional IPs and like Perfect Dark, Bad Fur Day, which was a really great game. Just all, and then you see the big companies that come in and swallow them whole. Jenza says the left column is the top half in the billions adjusted for inflation. Okay, that makes sense. That's what I thought. But this chart is just amazing, and the amount of acquisitional things that are happening. And Zynga is a huge one too, because they're a huge mobile competitor, and now they were acquired by Activision, I believe, and now, obviously Microsoft has them. We got, that's like Clash Royale and a bunch of other games like Warframe, all these mobile games they've never heard of and stuff like that. Tencent is still a big Chinese conglomerate company, and they've done a lot of acquisitional stuff. You even got Disney here, Viacom, Warner Brothers, Take-Two, Square Enix, Saber Interactive, KingNet, just big names taking over big games. Bandai, and it's just, I think that people don't understand the scope of this whole craziness. It's just crazy. I just had to talk about it. But what does this mean for the closeout here? Like, what does this mean for the future? What does it mean for the industry? I don't think anything bad's going to happen, but I think that the console wars, that whole idea of like, a new console coming out, who's going to buy this? It's kind of like coming to an end because, like I said, oh, Duck, thanks for the sub. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for stopping by too. Good morning, sir. Good morning, and thanks for the sub. Kind of at the tail end of it, but good morning, sir. To close out here, I want to talk about, like I said, Microsoft does not care about consoles anymore. Are they going to make them? Probably. Are they still going to make that a big part of their ecosystem? Absolutely. But Microsoft just wants the software now because software is the future. We're going to be getting into cloud gaming, people. Cloud gaming is a real thing that's happening. Eventually, we will not need consoles to game anymore. And that is really a thing of the future. And Microsoft is 100% a part of that. That is a part of what they want to do. They want to make sure that Xbox games are available to everyone. Does that mean one day we'll have Xbox Game Pass on a PlayStation? At this point, it's not unreasonable to believe that that's possible. Agreed that this is a way bigger platform exclusives. MS is thinking long-term. Long-term and software. It always used to be about hardware in gaming, right? Obviously, games matter too, and software was still a big part of it. But now we're getting away from this world with technology where things are just more digitally based, where we won't need to be buying PS5s or Xbox Series X's. You literally might buy a Roku thumbstick that you put into a TV, and that's going to be able to play your games. You're going to be able to turn an app on your smart TV and play all the Game Pass games you want, and all you're going to need is a controller, kind of like Google Stadia, and I think what was like Luna by Amazon. Like those things are kind of Jurassic right now, but Xbox is 100% going in that direction. And it's proof with PC Game Pass and just the ability to spread they want more eyes on their games than ever before. And that means they got to be open to not just having exclusives, to being available for gamers on anything you want to play. Jen says the console makers were more than happy to sell at a loss knowing they're making it back in software. Absolutely. Xbox, they're not making any money off of their consoles, believe it or not. I would imagine that they're at a loss on those, but they're making tons and tons of money on Game Pass subscriptions. And developers are also making lots of money on revenue and residuals from a Game Pass, for instance. So it really makes sense for a developer to say, all right, we'll put our game on Game Pass for X amount of months. And then Xbox gives them residuals of all the subscriptions and money they're getting in from Game Pass, you know? I turned on Game Pass yesterday, and there were a few games that I probably wouldn't buy in the store, but I'm happy to download on Game Pass and try out, you know? That's really awesome. And I think that, you know, what's different about this whole acquisition, it's not like, oh no, Microsoft bought all these games. It's more like, okay, I trust Microsoft to do the right thing here. They've already proven to me that they care about community. They've always, if you turn on Xbox Live, it is far and away better experience than PlayStation Store and even Nintendo eShop. You know, Nintendo tries their best, but their online abilities are still kind of flawed a little bit. But Xbox always knew about community, bringing people together. And whenever you see their kind of like their keynotes and stuff, it's always about the community. And when I watch Sony stuff, they don't really care as much about the PSN community. I know they're doing things to change that, and they've got their own Game Pass coming, but Xbox equals community across the board. No Fear says Xbox and PS are nothing more than a PC at this point. Absolutely. Genza says the PS3 was the 600, 800 to manufacture and sold for 400 at launch. Yes. Well, yeah, they had to drop that price a little bit because they scared people when they dropped those original PS3 prices. For the time they were selling them, there was like $600, $700 for like a PS3, and they thought that was normal to spike the inflation on those consoles. But obviously they were at a loss. But we are in good hands with Microsoft. I am not worried. Xbox cares about community, people. So, you know, buckle up and let's see where we go with this, because Phil Spencer is one of the best leaders in gaming, and I believe that. And as someone that's met him personally, I shook his hand. I could tell you that the guy is a very laid back, understands the gamer, cares about the gamer. When I think of PlayStation, I can't put there's no Phil Spencer that I feel like I'm like, oh yeah, PlayStation, Phil Spencer. The guy that leads PlayStation, I don't even like really know much about him, and I don't really care much about him. But with Xbox, you kind of know their community leaders, and that is number one, and that is important because you want to make sure that people know who are running your organization, not like Blizzard Activision, who had some scumbags running their stuff and really creating a toxic environment. It's not like that. So just remember, right now, there was no other better recourse for Activision Blizzard than Microsoft of all companies taking over to fix their problems. And that's just one little check mark on a bunch of other things that have happened because of this. Now, keep in mind, I don't think that the actual acquisition went through completely successfully. I think they have to go through regulatory, regulators have to check this. Is it a monopoly? Are we getting into monopolizing in gaming? Now, if we were going to talk about monopolizing, then Microsoft would be close to that. And if we remember back in the early 2000s, Microsoft had to go in front of the Senate or Congress and prove that they're not a monopoly, but the government said you are a monopoly. And then Microsoft had to divvy out a bunch of companies and sell off a bunch of stuff so that they weren't a monopoly anymore. So we got to be careful of that and keep an eye on that, because imagine hypothetically one day Nintendo does get bought by Microsoft and then Sony gets bought, like the PlayStation, Microsoft buys Sony. I mean, I don't think that would ever happen, but it's not unlikely because you got Disney buying Marvel and Star Wars. That was like a big surprise. So I don't want us to go that route. I'm hoping that that's not like where we're going to end up. But I think the future of gaming is still really, really exciting, really interesting. I kind of am just really excited about what that means for all of us, and I'm excited. So, if anyone wants to talk more about this, you can hit up our Discord. If you're not in the Discord already, definitely join. We give out games every week in the Discord. I no longer give games away on the show, but if you come in our Discord, I gave away 4 games last week, and I know that a bunch of people could attest to that. What's up, Bricks? Catching us on the end, man. Good to see you, though. Appreciate you stopping by. But yeah, I'm excited to see what happens here. I don't know if you guys are, but I am. I'm excited to see what Microsoft could do for the community, what Microsoft could do for the rest of the generational future of gaming. There's going to be kids born into this generation where Activision was already acquired, where people are going to forget the fact that Microsoft owns these IPs because of an acquisition. There's going to come a time where it's just part of the Microsoft ecosystem. And I think the only game for me is Diablo 4. And now I feel better about purchasing Blizzard IPs because I was boycotting them with all the harassment and terrible things they were doing behind the scenes. So I'd love to hear what people think. Feel free to tell me in the Discord, chat about it. I want to talk about this more with you all. And, you all can find me on all my social media below. This was a different episode, folks, a little bit less retro gaming, more about what today. But listen, it all matters, right? Because even though this is an acquisition, as you saw, Microsoft owns all these retro gaming properties like Crash Bandicoot, Space Quest, King's Quest, Police Quest, all these like cool games, Pitfall, games that maybe deserve to be looked at again and have a chance to release something else. And I feel like that is absolutely possible now with Microsoft. Will we wake up another morning and see some other crazy acquisition? I think probably likely. I don't know what that would be, but I think the next one on my list of, hey, how do we fix this problem is Electronic Arts and EA. EA has been going downward spiral. And if you ever listen to Nine Inch Nails, it was a great album, The Downward Spiral, which is exactly what EA has been going through. And I think that there's some IPs that EA has that are important to me. Madden, disgustingly working with the NFL to make one of the shittiest recurring games ever made. And as a football fan, I want that to change. So if Microsoft wants to buy EA and fix all that, I would be gladly supportive. But Jan, let's get them acquired so that we can get EA to stop doing stupid shit and making terrible games. And I just need to see them, get fixed a little bit. Take a heck ton of work to turn that around. Hey, we all thought that Blizzard was screwed, but now with Microsoft taking over Blizzard, I actually don't think they're screwed anymore. I think that there's a chance to fix this. So someone's got to fix EA, okay? And that could be a whole episode. Yes, Genzo knows what's up. I wouldn't be surprised if Tencent buys EA. Yeah, that's a good chance. And what's going to happen with Tencent too? That's a Chinese organization that also owns a big chunk of the gaming industry. So, that's an interesting thing to consider. That being said, folks, I am running out of time here. We're going to close out a little early today. I guess we're not running out of time, but since we don't have a guest and since I don't really have a drawn out episode digging into some cool retro stuff, we will be going back to that next Saturday. We got some exciting things to talk about. I have some interesting topics coming up. Want to thank everyone that stopped by, supported, listened to me rant about this whole thing because it's important to me, and I want to share my thoughts because, you know, I work in the gaming industry. This directly affects me, right? This directly affects me. As a nonprofit working for Stamp to Cancer, we said we're not going to work with Activision when they're going through stuff like this. You know, we have vetting processes. We want to work with good organizations. Now I feel better about us potentially working with an Activision IP because it's folding under the Microsoft umbrella, who we worked with in the past. So the future is okay, people. Will it change? Will things, you know, we can wake up another morning. It was a Tuesday morning. This all happened for $70 billion. So, you know, let's find someone to raid. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their Saturday and their weekends because, as you know, I love the weekend. Oh, Super Lit Mario is online. My good buddy, my good TikTok streamer, we're going to have to raid him, man. Super Lit Mario, who was on the show, is an awesome like Mario guy. And I guess we're going to go to him because he's a great guy. So let's give him love. Follow him. He's new to doing Twitch, so let's follow him. I can't wait to see it either, Genzo. What's lit? Exclamation point lit? Anyway, I'm Andy. I'll be your retro gaming ambassador from now and forever. But if you want to check out all my other things, I do a lot of stuff on Twitter. I do a lot of stuff on TikTok. I care about the gaming industry more than ever. I care about community. I care about the retro culture. And as you know, I care about people in general. So I want to thank everyone again. Let's give Super Lit Mario some time, respect, and love. He's a great guy, good friend of mine. And I'll see you all next week on CafeBTW, a gaming morning podcast. Until now, we're going to close up shop, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody. Until next time. Oh, yeah, there's a countdown on the raid, so I didn't time that quite right. But Super Lit Mario, I love this guy. Let's give him love. Tell him where you came from, and I'll see you next week, y'all.